Welcome to Global Watch. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that is reverberating across the nation and around the globe. The Supreme Court has delivered a landmark decision, striking down President Trump's sweeping tariffs, a move that's sending shockwaves through financial markets, government halls, and households alike. For nearly 2 years, these tariffs have been at the heart of U.S. economic policy, touching nearly every aspect of American life. From the price of groceries and electronics, to the cost of cars and clothing, the effects have rippled through store aisles and shipping lanes, shaping the way businesses operate and families budget. Now, with the court's ruling, that policy has been dismantled. The decision raises urgent questions, political, economic, and legal, that demand immediate attention from lawmakers, business leaders, and citizens. The impact is deeply personal. Small business owners have struggled to keep their doors open, farmers have faced uncertainty in global markets, and families have watched their expenses climb, on average, over $2,300 more per household. For many, these tariffs have meant tough choices and tighter budgets. On the international stage, America's allies and rivals are now recalibrating their relationships with the U.S. trade agreements, diplomatic ties, and economic alliances are all being reassessed in light of this dramatic shift. The immediate fallout is staggering. The government could be on the hook for up to $1 trillion in refunds to businesses and consumers, a logistical and administrative challenge of historic proportions, with agencies scrambling to respond. This decision forces a fundamental rethinking of America's role in global trade. Will the U.S. embrace a new era of open markets, or will it seek new ways to protect domestic industries? The political debate is just beginning. Lawmakers are divided, and the administration faces tough choices. Will they double down on protectionism, or pivot toward cooperation and compromise on the world stage? Tonight we'll break down the legal arguments that led to this decision, the economic consequences for businesses and families, and what all of this means for your wallet, your job, and your future. The Supreme Court has spoken, but the story is far from over. The coming weeks and months will reveal how this seismic shift will reshape the American economy and its place in the world. Stay with us as we unpack the fallout, the opportunities, and the challenges of this historic moment. To truly grasp the significance of today's Supreme Court ruling, let's take a step back in time and rewind the clock. Our story begins at the start of President Trump's second term, a period marked by bold promises and a renewed focus on American economic interests. Almost immediately, the administration rolled out what became known as fentanyl tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. These measures were designed to link international trade policy directly to the fight against the deadly opioid crisis, making trade a tool for drug enforcement. Just a few months later, President Trump declared a sweeping national emergency, citing what he called unfair trade practices and a ballooning U.S. trade deficit. He imposed a broad 10% tariff on nearly all imported goods, a move that stunned both allies and rivals. These so-called Liberation Day tariffs sent shockwaves through global markets. Stock prices tumbled, supply chains were thrown into chaos, and businesses around the world scrambled to adapt to the new reality. Unlike earlier, more targeted tariffs, these sweeping measures bypassed Congress entirely. This unprecedented approach sparked fierce opposition from lawmakers, business leaders, and trade experts alike, who argued it undermined the checks and balances of U.S. government. In response, a coalition of businesses, state governments, and major corporations quickly challenged the president's authority in federal court, arguing that such broad executive action overstepped constitutional limits. While lower courts initially sided with the challengers, the controversial tariffs remained in effect throughout the lengthy appeals process, keeping the business world on edge. Eventually, the Supreme Court agreed to take up the case, setting the stage for a historic showdown that would determine the future of presidential power over trade. After years of legal battles and national debate, this landmark decision has now reshaped the landscape of U.S. trade policy, with consequences that will echo for years to come. Central to this drama is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. Passed in 1977, IEPA lets presidents regulate international commerce during foreign threats, but only after declaring a national emergency. Trump's use of IEPA was unprecedented, arguing drug trafficking and trade deficits justified a trade war. Challengers argued IEPA wasn't a blank check for the president to rewrite trade law. Congress holds that power. Courts agreed, ruling the emergencies cited didn't meet IEPA's criteria for such sweeping tariffs. the Supreme Court faced a core question: where does executive power end and congressional authority begin? The majority sided with the challengers, finding Trump's use of IEEPA to wage a global trade war was an overreach. This ruling reasserts Congress's constitutional role in trade. On October 6, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark 6-3 decision overturning Trump's tariffs. The majority opinion sharply rebuked the administration's broad use of emergency powers. The court ruled IEEPA doesn't let the president impose tariffs on such a massive scale for economic or social issues. This decision reaffirms Congress's primary role in trade policy and draws a clear line between targeted sanctions and wholesale tariff changes. The justices acted quickly, signaling the urgency of resolving economic uncertainty. Dissenters warned the ruling could limit future presidents' crisis response, but the majority's view prevails. The decision not only invalidates a key Trump policy, but also redraws the boundaries of presidential power. The impact is immediate and far-reaching. The balance of power in U.S. trade has shifted. The Supreme Court's decision hit Washington like an earthquake, sending shockwaves through the Capitol and deepening already sharp partisan divides. The ruling was met with immediate and intense reactions from every corner of the political spectrum, as lawmakers, officials, and citizens tried to grasp the full implications. President Trump denounced the ruling as a disaster, warning of job losses and national security risks. He argued that the decision would undermine American industries and leave the country vulnerable to foreign competition, insisting that his administration's policies had protected American workers. His administration and Republican allies vowed to fight back, calling the court's move an affront to America first. They promised to explore every legal and legislative avenue to reverse or blunt the impact of the decision, rallying their base with calls for unity and resistance. Commerce and Treasury officials painted a grim economic picture, predicting factory closures and warning of ripple effects across supply chains. They cautioned that the ruling could trigger uncertainty in key sectors, from manufacturing to agriculture, and potentially slow economic growth. Democrats and some Republicans, however, hailed the decision as a victory for the rule of law and a needed check on executive power. They argued that the court had reaffirmed constitutional limits and restored balance between the branches of government, calling it a win for democracy. Critics argued the tariffs hurt U.S. businesses and consumers, and that retaliatory tariffs damaged American exports. Small business owners and farmers voiced concerns about rising costs and shrinking markets, while economists warned of long-term consequences for American competitiveness. The ruling has set up a high-stakes battle over the future of U.S. trade policy. Negotiators and policymakers now face tough choices about how to protect American interests while maintaining global partnerships and economic stability. The White House faces pressure to respond, while Congress must navigate the fallout. Lawmakers are bracing for heated debates and a flurry of new proposals as both sides seek to shape the next chapter of America's economic strategy. The coming weeks will be critical as the world watches America's next move, with allies and rivals alike closely monitoring how Washington will adapt to this historic turning point. The most immediate consequence? Money. Lots of it. With the tariffs struck down, the government must refund up to $1 trillion to importers. This is an unprecedented administrative challenge, with no playbook for such a massive payout. Businesses must file detailed claims, and the process will be slow, complex, and likely contentious. Customs and Treasury could be overwhelmed, leading to years of delays. The fiscal impact is huge. The sudden loss of tariff revenue and a massive payout could widen the deficit. For businesses, refunds offer relief, but uncertainty over timing complicates planning. Economist Dr. Jane Smith calls it relief on paper, chaos in practice. The government faces a painful budget reckoning. The economic aftershocks are just beginning. For American families, the big question: will prices drop now that tariffs are gone? In theory, removing tariffs should lower costs, but experts warn not to expect instant savings. Many companies absorb tariff costs or adjusted supply chains, so price changes will be gradual. Retailers will wait to see if the tariff removal sticks before lowering prices. Competition will eventually drive prices down, but it could take 6 to 12 months. Refunds to businesses won't directly reach consumers. They're compensation for importers, not shoppers. The main benefit for consumers will be indirect easing inflationary pressure over time. A more stable trade environment could eventually mean lower prices, but there are no guarantees. Patience will be key for shoppers. The path from court ruling to cheaper goods is long and uncertain. With tariffs overturned, the White House is scrambling for alternatives. President Trump vows to fight back, exploring other legal tools to reimpose tariffs. One option: Section 122 of the Trade Act, allowing temporary tariffs for 150 days, hardly a permanent fix. Another: Section 301, used previously against China, but it's a slower, more targeted process. Both options have legal and political hurdles. The administration could also ask Congress for new tariff authority, but that's a tough sell, in a divided legislature. Each path adds complexity and uncertainty to U.S. trade policy. The administration's next move is unclear. The trade battle is far from over. The world is watching for what comes next. Tonight, the Supreme Court's ruling marks a turning point for U.S. trade and presidential power. It's a win for businesses and a reaffirmation of constitutional checks and balances. But clarity brings new uncertainty. The government faces a $1 trillion refund challenge, and consumers may not see quick relief. Politically, the fight is just beginning, with the White House seeking new ways to pursue its agenda. This decision solves one problem but creates others: administrative chaos, fiscal strain, and political instability. The world is watching. Will the U.S. return to free trade, or double down on protectionism? The answers will shape the global economy for years. We'll keep following every twist, from Treasury's refund plans to the White House's next steps. Thank you for joining us. Stay informed and join the conversation below. Good night.